After spending 3 months building a treehouse by hand for my grandson's 7th birthday, I drove 9 hours through a thunderstorm to surprise him. When I stepped onto the back porch, soaking wet and bleeding from a cut on my forehead, I heard my son tell his wife, "If the old man croaks on the highway, we skip probate and sell his ranch before the body's cold." My daughter-in-law laughed and said, "Just make sure he signs the trust amendment first. After that, he can drop dead in the driveway for all I care." So I stood there in the rain, holding a handmade birdhouse I had carved for my grandson, and I made a phone call that would unravel their entire world within 48 hours. Tell me in the comments if someone you loved ever treated you like you were already dead. Like and subscribe for more stories where the truth comes out. My name is Walter Graves. I am 67 years old, and to anyone who has met me in the last 6 years, I am a retired ranch hand living on a small cattle spread outside of Billings, Montana. I wear the same 3 flannel shirts on rotation. I drive a 2001 Chevy Silverado with a cracked windshield and a transmission that screams every time I shift into third. My boots have more duct tape than leather. I eat at the same diner every morning, ordering the cheapest thing on the menu, and I leave exactly $1 tip because that is what a man on a fixed income can afford. That is the story they know. The truth is something else entirely. 40 years ago, I started Graves Energy Solutions out of a rented garage in Midland, Texas, with a borrowed drill bit and a dream. By the time I was 50, I had built it into one of the largest independent energy companies in the Rocky Mountain region. When I sold my controlling stake 6 years ago, the check had 9 figures on it. I did not sell because I was tired. I sold because my wife, Ruth, had just died of pancreatic cancer, and sitting in that corner office felt like drowning in a room full of air. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to find out if the people around me loved Walter or loved what Walter could buy them. So I hid everything. I moved the money into a network of blind trusts managed by a firm in Denver. I kept the ranch, 200 acres of nothing special, and I let the world believe I was broke. I let my son, Derek, believe his inheritance had been wiped out by bad investments and medical bills from Ruth's treatment. I let his wife, Vanessa, believe I was a burden they were obligated to tolerate. And I watched. For 6 years, I watched who called on my birthday and who only called when they needed something. The answer broke my heart long before that night on the porch. The drive from Billings to their house in Boise took 9 hours on a good day. That Thursday was not a good day. A late summer storm had rolled in from the west, turning the highway into a river. My windshield wipers could not keep up. The leak in my roof dripped steadily onto the passenger seat, soaking the blanket I had wrapped around the birdhouse. I had spent 2 months on that birdhouse, cutting each tiny shingle from cedar scraps, painting the little door the same shade of red as my grandson's favorite fire truck. It was meant for Oliver, my grandson, who had just turned 7. He loved birds. Every time I visited, which was not often enough, he would drag me outside to point at the robins and the jays. He was the only person in that family who looked at me and saw a person, not a problem. The treehouse was already done. I had driven down a month earlier while they were on vacation and built it in the old oak in their backyard. I had told the neighbor I was a contractor they had hired, and nobody questioned it. Nobody questions old men in work clothes. We are invisible. The treehouse was my real gift, but I wanted to bring something small for the party itself, something Oliver could hold in his hands and know his grandpa made it. My knees were screaming by hour 6. The arthritis in my right hand, the one I had broken twice in my younger days, had locked my fingers around the steering wheel in a permanent claw. I had to pry them open with my left hand every time I needed to shift gears. The heater worked, barely, pushing out a thin stream of warm air that could not compete with the wet cold seeping through every gap in the cab. But I kept driving. I kept driving because Oliver had called me 3 days ago and said, "Grandpa, are you coming to my party? Mom says you probably won't make it because of the rain." And I had told him, "Buddy, I would drive through a hurricane for you." So that is what I did. I pulled into their subdivision around 8 in the evening. It was one of those planned communities where every house looks the same. Beige stucco and brown trim, manicured lawns, and HOA rules about what color you can paint your mailbox. Derek and Vanessa's house was at the end of the cul-de-sac, the biggest one on the block. It had a 3-car garage, a pool they never used, and a monthly payment that I knew they could not actually afford. Derek sold commercial insurance. Vanessa spent money. That was the division of labor. I parked my truck on the street because Derek had told me last time that my vehicle lowered the property values when it sat in the driveway. The rain had slowed to a steady drizzle. I grabbed the birdhouse, tucked it under my coat, and walked up the side path toward the back porch. I wanted to come in through the kitchen door, the way I always did, quiet and unassuming. I did not want to make a scene. I just wanted to see Oliver's face. The kitchen light was on. Through the window, I could see the remnants of dinner, plates in the sink, a half-eaten birthday cake on the counter. They had already had the party. They had celebrated without me. I stood there, rain running down my neck, staring at the blue frosting and the number 7 candle lying on its side, and I felt something crack inside my chest. Then I heard them. The sliding glass door to the patio was open a few inches, letting the cool air in. Their voices carried clear as a bell through the gap. "He's not coming," Derek said, and there was relief in his voice, not worry. The storm probably scared him off. "You know how he drives, 30 miles an hour with his hazards on like a scared old woman." Vanessa laughed. "Good. I didn't want to deal with him tonight anyway. Last time he was here, he smelled like cattle and motor oil. The Hendersons were asking questions." "Let them ask," Derek said. "After next month, it won't matter. Once he signs the trust amendment, we move the ranch into our names, sell it to that developer, and we're looking at 2, maybe 3 million. That land is sitting on top of a natural gas deposit. Old man doesn't even know it." I froze. The natural gas deposit. I had known about it for 15 years. I had a geological survey locked in a safe in Denver that confirmed it. That land was worth closer to 18 million, but I had kept that information buried because I loved the land more than the money beneath it. And now, my son wanted to steal it from me and sell it for a fraction of its value. "What if he won't sign?" Vanessa asked, her voice dropping low. "He'll sign," Derek said. "I've been working on him for months. The dementia angle is almost ready. Dr. Hoffman owes me a favor. 1 evaluation, 1 diagnosis, and we file for conservatorship. Dad becomes a ward of the state, we become the conservators, and everything transfers automatically. He won't even understand what happened. And if he does understand," Vanessa pressed, "your father isn't as stupid as he looks, Derek. Sometimes he gets this look in his eyes, like he knows exactly what we're doing." Derek snorted. "He's a washed-up ranch hand who peaked in the 90s. He thinks the internet is a fad. Trust me, Nessa, the man can barely operate a microwave. A conservatorship hearing would take 15 minutes. The judge would look at him in that stained shirt and those broken boots and stamp the papers before lunch." I stood in the rain, holding a birdhouse painted the color of my grandson's favorite fire truck, and I listened to my only son plan my legal execution. Not just my property, my autonomy, my right to make decisions, my freedom. They were going to have me declared incompetent. They were going to put me in a box and throw away the key, and they were going to do it with a smile. I set the birdhouse down on the patio table, gently, so the little cedar shingles would not chip. The rain began to soak it immediately. I turned around and walked back to my truck. I did not run. I did not cry. Something inside me had shifted, the way tectonic plates shift before an earthquake. There was no shaking yet, just a deep, permanent rearrangement of everything I thought I knew about my own blood. I sat in the cab for a long time, listening to the rain on the roof. Then I reached under the seat and pulled out a phone. Not the flip phone Derek knew about, a satellite phone, encrypted, with 1 number programmed into it. I pressed the button. "Mr. Graves," said the voice on the other end. It was calm, precise, and completely unsurprised to hear from me at 9 o'clock on a stormy Thursday night. This was Elaine Park, my attorney, my former chief counsel at Graves Energy, and the only person on earth who knew every truth about my life. "Elaine," I said, "initiate Protocol 7. There was a pause. She knew what it meant. We had discussed it 3 years ago, when I first suspected Derek was circling. She had prepared the documents. She had set the dominoes in position. She had told me, "I hope you never have to make this call." "Are you certain, Walter?" she asked. "He's filing for conservatorship," I said. "He has a doctor lined up. They want to take everything, including my mind. Another pause. I'll have everything in motion by morning. Where do you want to set the stage? His house, I said. Oliver's birthday weekend. They're hosting a neighborhood barbecue on Saturday. 30, maybe 40 people. That's the audience I want. Understood. I'll arrange the team. Walter? Yeah, I'm sorry. Me too, Elaine. Me too. I hung up and started the engine. The transmission screamed as I pulled away from the curb. I drove to a Holiday Inn 3 miles away, checked in under a false name, and lay on the stiff mattress staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. The next morning I called Derek from the flip phone. Dad? He answered on the 4th ring, his voice groggy and irritated. Where are you? I'm in Boise, I said, letting my voice waver. Truck broke down on the highway last night. Some kind man towed me to a motel. I'm sorry I missed the party, son. I had a birdhouse for Oliver. I left it on your patio. The change in his tone was instantaneous. Warm, concerned, fatherly toward his father. Dad, you drove all the way here in that storm? You shouldn't have done that. That's dangerous. Are you okay? Where's the motel? I'll come get you. He would come get me. Not because he cared about my safety, but because I was out in the world, unsupervised, where I might talk to someone, where I might think clearly without his influence. He needed me back inside the fence. I'd appreciate that, son, I said, giving him the address. He picked me up an hour later in his Audi Q7, the one he had leased last month despite being 3 months behind on his mortgage. When I climbed in, I noticed he was wearing a new watch. Not expensive by most standards, but expensive for a man drowning in debt. He saw me looking at it. Gift from a client, he said quickly. Too quickly. I nodded and said nothing. When we arrived at the house, Vanessa greeted me at the door with a hug that lasted exactly 2 seconds and a smile that did not reach her eyes. Walter, you look terrible, she said, which was her version of concern. Let me make you some tea. But before she could steer me inside, a small body came hurtling down the hallway. Oliver, still in his pajamas, launched himself at my legs, wrapping his arms around my knees with a force that nearly knocked me over. Grandpa, you came. I knew you'd come. Mom said you wouldn't, but I told her you promised, and you always keep your promises. I knelt down, my knees cracking like gunshots, and I wrapped my arms around him. He smelled like maple syrup and laundry soap, and he was the only real thing in that house. Of course I came, buddy, I said. I brought you something. Did you see the birdhouse on the patio? His eyes lit up like sparklers. That was from you? I thought it was from the mailman. It's the best birdhouse ever. Can we put it in the treehouse? I blinked. You found the treehouse? It's amazing, Grandpa. Did you build it? Dad said a construction crew must have made a mistake, but I told him no one makes a mistake that cool. Derek shot me a look from behind Oliver's head, a flash of annoyance that he quickly buried. Dad, you built a treehouse in our yard without telling us? I wanted it to be a surprise for Oliver's birthday, I said simply. We'll talk about that later, Derek muttered. His jaw was tight. He did not like surprises he had not orchestrated. That evening, they put me in the guest room, which was something, at least. But the door had a lock on the outside, a detail I noticed Vanessa testing when she thought I was in the bathroom. She did not lock it. Not yet, but she wanted me to know it was there. A silent threat wrapped in suburban hospitality. Dinner was takeout pizza. They ordered 3 pies for themselves and gave me a single slice and a cup of lukewarm soup, claiming the pizza would upset my stomach. Oliver sat next to me and quietly slid a second slice onto my plate when his parents were not looking. I looked at that boy, 7 years old, already learning to navigate the cruelty of adults, and I felt my resolve harden into something unbreakable. After dinner, Derek made his move. He pulled out a folder from his office, thick with papers, and set it on the kitchen table. Dad, while you're here, there are some things we should go over. Financial planning, making sure you're taken care of. I reached for the folder, but Vanessa intercepted it, opening it to a specific page and placing it in front of me. It's really simple, Walter. It's just an update to your trust documents. Standard stuff. Your lawyer should have sent these to you months ago, but you know how these things get lost in the mail. I looked at the page. It was a trust amendment transferring full discretionary control of my personal trust to Derek as sole trustee, with Vanessa as successor. It included a clause granting them power of attorney over all medical and financial decisions. Below that was a pre-signed affidavit from Dr. Richard Hoffman stating that I showed significant cognitive decline consistent with early-stage dementia. A doctor I had never seen had already diagnosed me. I let my hand tremble as I picked up the pen they offered. Oliver was in the living room, watching a movie. I could hear the cartoon music through the wall. "What does this do again?" I asked, squinting at the page, playing the confused old man they needed me to be. "It just makes sure we can help you, Dad," Derek said, his hand on my shoulder, his grip too firm. "If something happens to you, if you get sick or confused, we can step in and take care of things. It's for your protection." I signed the first page, then the second, then the third. I signed every page they put in front of me, and I did it with a signature that was close to mine but not quite right. A subtle alteration that any handwriting expert would catch in 5 seconds. The trust amendment was meaningless anyway. The trust they were trying to amend had been restructured 18 months ago. The entity they were referencing no longer existed. They were signing a dead document, and they did not know it. When I finished, Derek practically ripped the folder out of my hands. He and Vanessa exchanged a look of such naked greed that it took everything I had not to stand up and put my fist through the wall. Instead, I shuffled to the guest room, closed the door, and listened as they opened a bottle of champagne in the kitchen. I heard Vanessa say, "We should celebrate. Call the Hendersons. Tell them Saturday's barbecue is going to be special." I heard Derek say, "In 2 weeks, that ranch is ours." The gas company already offered $2.5 million for the mineral rights alone. I lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, counting the hours. Saturday arrived bright and hot. Derek and Vanessa had transformed the backyard into a showpiece. Tiki torches lined the fence. A rented smoker was billowing hickory smoke. Coolers of craft beer sat on every table. The neighbors came in waves. The Hendersons, the Marshalls, the Coopers, the whole suburban ecosystem of people who measured success by the size of your grill and the brand of your sunglasses. I was stationed in a lawn chair in the corner, away from the food, away from the conversations. Vanessa had dressed me in a clean shirt, at least, but she had told me to try not to talk too much because people might get the wrong idea about your condition. Oliver kept running over to me, bringing me lemonade, showing me bugs he found in the garden, asking me to tell him about the hawks back at the ranch. Every time he came to me, Vanessa would call him away. "Oliver, leave Grandpa alone. He needs to rest." She was already building the narrative. The frail old man, the declining mind, the loving family bravely shouldering the burden. Derek was working the crowd, shaking hands, refilling drinks, laughing too loud at jokes that were not funny. He was a man performing confidence, a man who believed his problems were about to vanish because a confused old rancher had scrawled his name on a piece of paper. At 4 o'clock, when the party was at its peak, I heard the sound I had been waiting for. Not a helicopter. I am not that dramatic. It was a simple black sedan pulling into the driveway, followed by a second one, and then a sheriff's cruiser. The car doors opened. Elaine Park stepped out first, wearing a charcoal suit that cost more than every outfit at that barbecue combined. Behind her were 2 associates carrying document cases. Behind them, 2 sheriff's deputies in full uniform. The backyard went quiet the way a forest goes quiet when a predator enters the clearing. Derek saw them first. His smile froze. He set down his beer and walked toward the gate. "Can I help you? This is a private event." Elaine did not acknowledge him. She walked past him, through the gate, across the patio, and stopped directly in front of my lawn chair. Then she did something that made every person at that barbecue hold their breath. She extended her hand, helped me to my feet, and said in a voice that carried across the entire yard, "Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Everything is in order. The team is ready whenever you are." I stood up. Not the way they had seen me stand all weekend, groaning and hunched. I stood the way I used to stand in boardrooms, straight-backed, shoulders square, eyes sharp. I unbuttoned the cuff of my flannel shirt and rolled up the sleeve, revealing a watch that most of the people at that barbecue had only seen in magazines. A Patek Philippe Nautilus, white gold, $250,000 ticking quietly on the wrist of a man they thought could not afford new boots. Derek's face went white. Dad, what is this? Who are these people? These people, I said, and my voice was not the thin, wavering voice they had heard all weekend. It was the voice that had closed billion-dollar deals. It was the voice that had commanded 2,000 employees. These people work for me. The way this house works for me. The way your debt works for me. I turned to face the crowd. 30-some people, holding plates of barbecue, staring at me like I had risen from the dead. My name is Walter Graves, I said. 6 years ago, I sold Graves Energy Solutions for a figure I will not disclose. I have spent the last 6 years living simply, testing a theory. The theory was that my family loved me. I am sorry to report the experiment failed. Derek stepped forward, his hands shaking. Dad, you're confused. You're not well. This is exactly what I was talking about. The episodes. The episodes, I repeated, turning to him. You mean the diagnosis from Dr. Richard Hoffman? The doctor who signed an affidavit saying I have dementia? The doctor I have never met? The doctor who, as of this morning, is under investigation by the Idaho Medical Board for filing a fraudulent medical evaluation? The color drained from Derek's face so fast I thought he might faint. Elaine stepped forward, opening her document case on the patio table, right next to the potato salad. For the record, she said, her voice clinical and devastating. Mr. Graves underwent a comprehensive cognitive evaluation at the Mayo Clinic in Scottsdale 3 weeks ago. The results confirm that his mental faculties are fully intact. His IQ tested in the 98th percentile, higher than it was when he founded his company 40 years ago. She pulled out a second set of documents. Additionally, the trust amendment that Mr. Derek Graves and Mrs. Vanessa Graves presented to Mr. Walter Graves for signature 2 days ago is null and void. The trust it references was dissolved 18 months ago and replaced with a new entity under the sole control of Mr. Walter Graves. The signatures obtained were deliberately altered by Mr. Graves to provide evidence of coercion. We have the originals, and they have been submitted to the county prosecutor. Derek grabbed the edge of the table. This is insane. You can't do this. That's my father. He's senile. He doesn't know what he's saying. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. I pressed play. Derek's own voice filled the backyard, tinny but unmistakable. One evaluation, one diagnosis, and we file for conservatorship. Dad becomes a ward of the state. Then Vanessa's voice. Your father isn't as stupid as he looks. Then Derek again. He's a washed-up ranch hand who peaked in the 90s. A conservatorship hearing would take 15 minutes. The silence that followed was absolute. The neighbors stared. Some had their phones out, recording. The Hendersons, Derek's closest friends, took a visible step backward, distancing themselves from the wreckage. Now, I said, turning to the deputies, let me tell you about the house. Elaine laid out the final documents. The property at 412 Ridgecrest Drive has been in default for 4 months, 3 missed mortgage payments. The original lender sold the note last week to an entity called Keystone Holdings, which is a subsidiary of the Graves Family Trust. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Mr. Walter Graves is the sole lien holder on this property. He is exercising his right to call the loan due in full. Immediately, Derek sank into a chair. His legs simply gave out. You bought our house, he whispered. I bought your debt, I corrected him. All of it. The mortgage, the car lease, the credit cards, the $38,000 you owe to that online poker site you think Vanessa doesn't know about. Vanessa's head snapped toward Derek. What poker site? The one he has been losing to for 2 years, I said. The reason you are broke is not the market, Vanessa. It's not the economy. It is your husband's gambling addiction. And it is your shared decision to solve it by robbing your father. Vanessa turned on Derek with a fury that told me their partnership was built on sand. You told me it was the business. You told me the clients weren't paying. Enough, I said. I was not interested in watching them destroy each other. They would do that on their own time. Sheriff, the property belongs to me. I would like these individuals removed. Derek lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Dad, please. Think about Oliver. Where is he going to go? You can't put your grandson on the street. I looked at him, and for a moment, just a moment, I let him see the pain behind the armor. Oliver. I said quietly, is the only reason I didn't do this 6 months ago. I pulled my arm free and walked across the yard to the old oak tree. Oliver was sitting in the treehouse, watching everything through the wooden railing I had sanded smooth so he would never get a splinter. His eyes were wide and scared. "Grandpa," he called down, "why is everyone yelling?" I climbed the ladder. My knees screamed, my back protested, but I climbed, because that boy needed me more than my body needed rest. I sat down beside him on the platform I had built with my own hands, and I put my arm around him. "Buddy," I said, "how would you like to come live at the ranch with me for a while? We can watch the hawks every morning. We can put that birdhouse up in the big cottonwood by the creek." His face lit up with a hope that nearly broke me. "Really? Can I bring my backpack?" "You can bring anything you want." I carried him down the ladder. The deputies were escorting Derek and Vanessa to the front of the house. Vanessa was crying. Derek was arguing, threatening lawyers, threatening lawsuits, threatening everything a desperate man threatens when he realizes he has no cards left to play. As I walked through the yard, Oliver on my hip, I passed the table where the recording was still playing on a loop. One of the neighbors, a woman I had never met, touched my arm gently. "Mr. Graves," she said, her eyes wet. "I'm glad you're okay." I nodded and kept walking. Elaine had a car waiting out front, not a limousine, a simple black SUV with a car seat already installed in the back. She thought of everything. I buckled Oliver in, making sure his backpack was on the seat beside him, making sure his seatbelt was snug. Derek was standing on the sidewalk, the deputies behind him, his world collapsing in real time. He called out to me one last time, "Dad, please, I'm your son." I stopped. I turned. I looked at the man I had raised, the boy I had taught to fish, the teenager I had sent to college, the adult who had plotted to cage me like an animal and steal my life. "You were my son," I said. "Today you are my debtor. And Derek, unlike you, I give people a chance to earn their way back. But you have to earn it. No more lies, no more schemes, no more using the people who love you as ATM machines. When you are ready to be a man, you know where to find me." I climbed into the SUV. Oliver was already falling asleep, his head against the window, the birdhouse clutched in his small hands. Elaine sat in the passenger seat, reviewing documents, already 3 steps ahead. The driver pulled away from the curb. In the side mirror, I watched Derek sink to his knees on the lawn of a house that was no longer his. The drive back to Montana took 12 hours. Oliver slept for most of it. I did not sleep at all. I watched the road, the mountains growing larger on the horizon, and I thought about Ruth. I thought about what she would say if she could see what our son had become. I think she would have been sad. I think she would have been proud of me for protecting Oliver. I think she would have told me that love is not a contract, it is a choice. And sometimes the bravest choice is walking away from the people who use it against you. We arrived at the ranch at sunrise. The sky was pink and gold, the kind of morning Ruth used to call God showing off. Oliver woke up as I carried him inside. He looked around at the simple cabin, the worn furniture, the photos of Ruth on the mantel, and he smiled. "Grandpa," he said, "this is the best house ever." I set him down and he ran to the window, pressing his face against the glass. Outside, a red-tailed hawk was circling the creek, riding the thermals, effortless and free. "Look, Grandpa, a hawk. Can we go see it?" I looked at that boy, 7 years old, still capable of wonder, still untouched by the greed that had consumed his parents. And I made a promise, not out loud, but in the deepest part of my heart, that I would protect that wonder for as long as I had breath in my body. "Yeah, buddy," I said, taking his hand. "Let's go see it." We walked out together into the morning light, leaving the darkness behind us, heading towards something that money could never buy and betrayal could never steal. We were heading home. If this story moved you, if you believe Walter did the right thing by saving Oliver and giving Derek a chance to earn redemption instead of shutting the door forever, hit the like button. Subscribe to Voices of Fatherhood for more stories about the sacrifices fathers make, the battles they fight in silence, and the love that survives even the worst betrayal. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to choose between your family and your dignity? I want to hear your story.